Hey everyone, welcome to the Boozers Basketball Podcast, the basketball podcast where we like to sometimes drink beer and talk NBA hoops with friends. I'm your host, Amir Motamani, joined today by my buddy Neil Joshi. How's it going, Neil?
I'm great. How are you?
Not too bad. It's a Monday, kind of a slow day, so excited to hop on and chat some hoops with you. Um, so yeah, really exciting, game two NBA Finals between the Golden State Warriors and the Boston Celtics. Golden State whooped the Boston Celtics ass, which I was really enthused and happy about. Wasn't the most exciting game, after the third quarter or even amidst the third quarter, unless you're a Warriors fan. But yeah, really excited to do another NBA Finals recap and then a Game 3 preview, which will be this Wednesday in Boston. So yeah, really fun game. It started off really great and competitive. Jaylen Brown, was carrying the Celtics in that first quarter. Started off really hot. And then he seemed to cool down significantly, just like the rest of his team, with the exception of Jason Tatum, who had a good bounce back game, like we all predicted and imagined that he would. But yeah, just overall, what were your thoughts on that game too?
This game was really similar to game one in that it was a really competitive first half. I think game one, it was a 2 point game with the Celtics ahead. Game two, I think the Warriors were up by two. But then the third quarter, the Warriors just dominated again. And that's becoming a trend in this series where Golden State is just taking control of the game in the third quarter. But I think in game two, they were able to land a knockout blow of sorts. Jordan Poole hit a couple of dagger threes that pretty much ended everything. There was no way Boston was going to come back from a 20-point deficit entering the fourth quarter. I think in game one, they were only down 12. So there was still an opportunity. The door was still open. But then in game two, that opportunity wasn't there. And Boston is really turning the ball over too much right now. If they're able to set their defense and play at a pace that they're comfortable with, they're doing a pretty good job of limiting Golden State. But these live ball turnovers are putting them in compromising positions, and Golden State's taking advantage of that. And this is something that Boston's been doing for a long time. So I don't think that's really something we can expect to change too much. I mean, unless they have some sort of realization that they need to stop making turnovers, but it just seems like it's kind of ingrained in their DNA that they're careless. Jaylen Brown struggles with ball handling. Jason Tatum has been committing turnovers the entire postseason. But that's something that's really turning the tide in the game. It was a close game, and then the next thing you knew, the game was out of hand. So this game three that we're going to look ahead to is really going to be more important for Boston. I think they got to win this game to reassert control, because if Golden State is able to win game three, then it's almost like a do or die for Boston in game four. Well, what did you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment. If the Celtics don't defend home court, especially in game three, they're going to lose all momentum, I think, in the series. So I think it's not a must win, but it's a very important win to win that one at home. Because again, if Boston loses, they immediately give the Warriors home court advantage. That's 2 games in a row that they've won. They're a pretty good road team. Obviously, they're a really amazing home team, with the only one loss in game one. But I agree with you on the turnover front. That as well as like the theme in this NBA is it's a make or miss league, and they missed all their shots. Like they did pretty decent actually in the first half with their threes. I think they're 10 for 19 in like the first half. But again, that third quarter though, they started shooting very poorly, and it was a combination of the defense that Warriors were playing really well, like having Gary Payton back on the floor, Junior, definitely helped with building the energy, within the crowd. Once he came in, fans were super excited, and he's just a really good on-ball defender, very good hands, good in the passing lanes. So he contributed to the Browns and the Tatums getting their turnovers, which Tatum's just weak handles, man. Like he has like a good crossover, but when he's dribbling multiple times to the basket, he typically loses the ball. Like it seems like one out of every like 10 times, like not 10 times, that's too many times. One out of every like 4 drives, right? Because he's driving to the basket maybe 10, 12 times a game. So he's having 3 to 4 turnovers, like 25% of, the times that he drives to the hoop, um, which is pretty high, right? And so I think he needs to stick more to like that mid-range pull-up game, just because Draymond and Gary Payton and players like that, they're long wings. The Wiggins Porters can give him trouble, right? And also he's quick, but he's just, I don't know, off the dribble he's not extremely quick, and so he's had a lot of trouble. Tatum, back and forth. I feel like every other game he has like 4 turnovers, right? Like at game one, he only had 2, he had 13 assists, so he had a really good assist to turnover ratio. But turnovers are huge too. Marcus Smart supposed to be their point guard, if you will, right? Not, I don't consider him a real point guard, but pretty good playmaker. He's developed that, this year specifically. I think he's improved, but he had some stupid, careless turnovers, bad passes in the first quarter, and he was completely shut down, right? Like one basket in the first quarter, he had a layup, and he had nothing else after that,
Him and
right?
Horford, they combined for 4 points.
100%. Yeah, like I said this in the last podcast, like they're not going to get that contribution from them, but like we need, if they
Something.
want to be in the series, they need Horford to get like 8 to 10, maybe 8 to 12 points. Like anywhere from like 7 to 10 rebounds, couple assists to block, and then they need Marcus Smart to get them, 15 points, 5 assists, maybe a few rebounds, couple steals. Um, they have no chance if Marcus Smart plays like that, and he won't play like that again. That's like probably his worst game like ever in the playoffs. It seems like, and Horford's just old. He had his issues, which we can talk about. But um, what was your thoughts, just like on how the Warriors performed? Like, what adjustments do you think they made, whether it's offensively or defensively, that you saw?
Mostly defensively. They scored 108 in game one, 107 in game two. So they kind of have their sweet spot on what you can expect offensively. But holding Boston to 88 points after they allowed 120 in game one, that's a huge difference. And that's really sustainable because you know that the transition baskets are going to be key for yourself. So if you commit yourself to the defensive end, you create turnovers, you contest shots, then you can get the easy baskets on the other end. And Golden State, we know, is a great offensive team, but you've spoken about how Golden State's defense might not get enough attention. They're one of the top 2 units in the league defensively. And you really saw like the desperation they were playing with, and that's something they're going to need to carry over into Boston. So I think it was really all about the defensive end. One other thing I would note is that Klay Thompson is really up against it right now. He's not the same player that he was before the injury, and we're just waiting. When is he going to have the breakout game? He's had some games like that over the course of this playoff run, but he's just not a consistent guy you can rely on for like 22 to 25 points a game right now. And it seems more likely that he will have his one breakout game. You're hoping it's game 3 or game 4 in Boston. And then the rest of the time, he might give you 13 points. So that's a pretty big drop off from what we have come to expect from Klay. And then you need someone like Andrew Wiggins, Kevin Looney to kind of pick up the slack. So do you expect Klay Thompson to play at the level he's been playing at? Or do you think this is just something that's going to regress back to what we've come to expect from him?
I think he's going to be like just similar. I think he's going to score probably like 15 points per game. He probably will have one breakout game 6 type of Klay game where, against the Thunder where he had like a million threes. He's capable, like he can, like he's taking good shots, like he's making those typical tough shots. He's not getting as much separation as he used to. He's not penetrating to the hoop nearly as much as he used to. Like I think he had like a layup. I remember one layup specifically where he attacked the rim very quickly, but he attacked, even though he's not also very similar to like Jaylen Brown, not like the best dribbler, ball handler, but he was still able to take it to the rack and get some dunks, right? I feel like that's how he got hurt in the finals, right? A couple years ago. Um, I don't know if he made the dunk or missed it. I can't remember, but he's attacking less, um, which is going to limit his ability to rack up the points unless he's just on fire and he's very ignitable, right? Like from an offensive perspective. And last round he had like a game I think where he had 26 points against who did they play last round? I don't know why.
Dallas against
Against
Dallas.
Dallas. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know
he
why.
also the closeout game against Memphis. I know he came up big. So at this point in time, it seems like Clay is good for one of those trademark games once a series. So
Yeah,
it's going to come at some point, but it just seems like the normal level of performance is going to be what we've been seeing, as you mentioned. And then you're going to bank on one of those games where he breaks out.
yeah. I don't think it's as necessary because Wiggins, you know, has kind of taken that place, I guess, of like taking the second most shots on the team. Right, he didn't do as well. Wasn't as efficient. He had less points. He had 11 points last game, 4 for 12 from shooting. But um, unless he's not being aggressive and other people are not really helping Steph, right? Like, 'cause Steph again is the main person that's been carrying the team offensively. I mean, with the exception, Wiggins had 20 last game, but it was or game one, but it seemed like a quiet 20. Um, I don't think they need that Clay unless everybody else, like Wiggins, isn't contributing, Poole isn't contributing some points, and Otto Porter is not making a couple threes, or their role players are not making wide open shots for them. Um, then I think they need that Clay where he's getting, 18 to 22 points, which I don't know if we can count on him. If he was healthy, I think he would for sure. Because think about it though, like he hasn't even played a full regular season in terms of games, even with the 20 something games they've played in the playoffs. He only played like 40 regular season games. He's like not even at a full 82 game. Um, so like he's still coming back into form, right? And so it'll be exciting to see how he does in the next game or two because he's just been off. Like he had poor shooting night, and I don't think that's going to happen again. As long as he could shoot 50% field goal range, get you like 12, 15, 16 points. I think that's good enough as long as, the other role players and like Wiggins are contributing and helping Steph because Steph has been on fire. He's been making a ton of 3-pointers, shooting like extremely high clip. I think he's shooting like 48% or so in the first two games. So
Yeah,
yeah,
but
we'll see.
with this series moving to Boston, you can't really count on the role players as much. We've had discussions about this where as soon as you hit the road, those numbers really start to take a dip. So can you really expect Wiggins to put up 20, maybe Otto Porter to hit 3, 4 threes? It's really going to be on Clay to assume that number two position in terms of scoring because he has the experience. Boston Garden is going to be wild for the finals coming back for the first time since 2010. So in one of these games, Clay really needs to break out. That's going to be the key to Boston, or excuse me, Golden State stealing one of these games so that they can get back to 2-2 and chase, which I expect. I expect Golden State to win at least one of these games, but a key driver to get that win in Boston is Clay breaking out sooner rather than later.
Yep. Another key player too is Draymond. We talked about in the last podcast how he was forced to take a lot of jumpers in game one and, was 2 for 12. They had a Draymond game. He didn't technically, he only took 3 shots. He was like 2 for 3, but like he actually took like 7 or 8 shots. He just got fouled, right? So they don't obviously count those field goal attempts if he was fouled. But he had a really significant game, right? From like a defensive perspective, he didn't hurt them offensively. He got to the free throw line, I think 7 times, made like 5 out of 7, 9 points. So, and then of course on the defensive end, he made his presence felt. He got the game in the mud, right? Kind of muckied up the first half, right? Getting under the skin of a few different players. So, what were your thoughts on Draymond in that game? His impact and just like his antics.
I mean, once he got that first technical, he knew that the refs weren't going to eject him. I think he got a double technical in the first quarter, and then he got into a little skirmish with Jaylen Brown when he was shooting the three. And he's like, if I just kind of push the envelope on what I'm doing to Jaylen, they're not going to throw him out. And even when the commentators were talking to the ref about the rules, he's like, yeah, the fact that Draymond has a technical already is going to impact how they ref him moving forward. It has to be something extremely egregious to get thrown out. So Draymond was just able to kind of ruffle every player on Boston, knowing that there was no way he was going to get ejected. So he'll gladly take a technical early in the game if it gives him the ability to have unlimited latitude on how he's able to kind of disrupt players on the other team, and he takes advantage of it. It's almost like it's an intentional thing at this point.
Yeah, it's like guerrilla warfare with him. Like he's just like leveraging these tactics, this like emotional like warfare that he's having with these players that are getting under their skin. And some players, are strong minded. Like you do that to going back MJ or Kobe, maybe even like a Charles Barkley or Shaq or anybody like that. Like you're not going to get in their head. You're just going to get them actually angry, and they're probably going to play better. Some of the few players that could play that way, maybe even LeBron. I don't know. But youngsters like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, that can get them out of rhythm, get them to play more hesitant, cautious, aggressive in a bad way. Like you saw Jason Tatum starting to push Draymond and had like a couple fouls back to back in the first quarter um, against Draymond Green, right? So like that can get them out of rhythm, out of the game. So yeah, it's just funny that he gets away with so much more, like you mentioned. It's like the same in a sense where he gets like the superstar treatment where superstar players get BS foul calls and free throws, right? Um, we saw Giannis get like every call, now the last year or two. But he's getting that treatment where he's like a kind of like a superstar, but on the defensive side where he can like push the boundaries and he gets a little chippier. So he had some, I think, plays with like Grant Williams as well, where like they could have been double text, but I don't know. I don't like seeing those double texts. They're all soft. It slows the game down. So not a big
And they were taking reviews throughout the game. There's probably like 3 reviews in the first half over who knows what. I mean, it's just unnecessary.
right. But yeah, he made a big impact, and I just like he's the type of guy that you wish you had on your team, right? Like that you can go to battle with, and he was all star, Draymond Green in that game. His numbers don't jump off the screen, but like he had a huge impact: 9 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, a block, a steal, and got underneath the entire skin of the Boston Celtics
Yep,
and in that game.
absolutely.
So yeah, definitely. Again, a lot of the intangibles were big. Um, but yeah, I think I'm looking at the box score here, and we already talked a little bit about how the Warriors had that amazing third quarter. It was 35-14, right? So huge quarter that pretty much ended the game. So, what adjustments do you think the Celtics need to make, just generally when they're going back home? But also, what can they do like defensively to avoid these third quarter lapses that they've had back to back?
I think the biggest thing is turnovers. I mentioned that at the top because when they're able to set their defense, they're doing a great job of defending Golden State. But I don't know off the top of my head how many turnovers they had in the third quarter, but that just really opens up everything for Golden State. And once they get going, then they can bury you. And turnovers just that's like the catalyst for Golden State to bury you. So I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, it's a make or miss league, right? If Boston's going to score 14 points in the third quarter, there's not a lot of defense you can do to keep yourself in the game, but maybe they hold them to 25 instead of 35
Right.
and have a heartbeat if they're not turning the ball over. So I think the most important thing is turnovers. And it just seems like one game, it's like a terribly bad issue. And then other games, it's not as bad. It seems like turnovers are always going to be a part of the story with Boston. But in some of these games, even in the Miami series, game one, where they let the game go in the first quarter or the third quarter, it was turnovers that led to like the avalanche of the run that just effectively ended the game. So you expect going back home that turnovers won't be as much of an issue, but Boston hasn't exactly torn it up at home. I think they're 5-4 at home in the playoffs. So I don't know what to expect from them in terms of turnovers, but I think that's the easiest route to having a better result in the third quarter moving forward.
Yeah, they had 18 and the Warriors had 12. So it's not like they had 10 more. Like it's not like they had a ton of turnovers in comparison, but I don't know that number, what how many points they scored off of those turnovers. And I'm assuming based on looking at the box score that that plus them missing a lot of open shots and just no contribution from the role players, basically. The Horford's Smart's not a role player, but Smart, Horford, Derek White, had like 12 points, but he was like 3 for 15 or something, like low shooting field goal percentage. But I would be curious. I'm looking at just the box right now, and 18 turnovers to 12, but they still shot pretty decent. 15 from 37 from three. That's 41%. Field goals, 30 for 80, 38%. Not like terrible, right? Warriors were 45% from field goal, 41 from three. So the same. Free throws, Boston shot better, 13 out of 17, 76%. Warriors were 14 for 20, 70%. Right. So it's like those turnovers had to have been maybe the biggest issue, right? Than them missing shots. Because again, they shot a pretty decent field goal percentage to stay within the game, which they did in the first half. So to your point, I think just cutting back on those turnovers would be like one of the biggest adjustments because going home, they're going to have hopefully improved play by their role players, right?
100%.
So what are your thoughts? Okay, so game three um, in a couple days in Boston. So who do you think is going to win that game? I know you mentioned you think the Warriors are going to split, but like, do you think they're going to win game three, or do you think it's going to be game four?
Well, if we're expecting this to be a long series, I would probably have to lean Boston. But I mean, Golden State is coming in hot right now. So it's going to require one of the better performances the Celtics have had in the entire playoffs to get this thing done in game three. For the sake of saying this is going to be a long series, I'll lean Boston, but I can't really say it too confidently right now because we know what Golden State is going to do on the road. They're not going to be as fazed by the crowd, the road environment. They've been through this so many times. All of the key players and Klay Thompson. I mean, he's pretty much the X factor at this point. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he is liable to break out at any moment, and we're almost expecting it. So if he comes out and he's just cooking right from the get go in game three, Boston's already in trouble. And Jason Tatum, like he might have played better in game three in terms of like scoring output, but I don't really think his shooting has been very good this series. Just
Yeah,
anecdotally, I don't know if the stats back me up on that, but I mean, he was
he
terrible shooting in game one, but I don't think he got to like 50% in game two.
no, he was 8 for 19.
I mean, that's not great.
It's not great, but it's not. Yeah, I mean, you want him to shoot like probably like in the high 40s, right? 45, 46% range at least.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, he was 8 for 19, 6 from 9 from three, 6 from 8
that's
from
true. He was knocking down threes, especially in the first half.
hit
That
five
was
in the
kind of the
first
key
half.
to keeping the Celtics in the game was the
Yeah,
fact that he was just like he couldn't miss from three. But overall, he needs to play a little bit more solid. We're expecting that this is a top 10 player in the league right now. And he's getting outplayed by Steph, I would say.
yeah, 100%. It's not even close.
Yeah.
I mean, he's close to a Steph caliber type of player in a sense because he's 24 years old and he has his whole career ahead of him, but he's not on the same level as Steph currently. Um,
And this series is just validating that sentiment even more.
yeah, I think so. He's just not efficient enough um, as a scorer. I mean, he's getting better at defense, but still, I just think he didn't have the biggest impact outside of the first half with those 5 threes. Like, because again, he's not shooting at a high clip, so he's not hitting timely shots, right? When they need it. So,
Yeah, exactly. He was doing great in the first half, but then the third quarter comes around you see Golden State making their push, that's when you need your superstar to help you stay in the game. And that just did not happen at all.
Yeah, no help from Jaylen Brown, who was 5 for 17, 3 for 9 from three. He started off pretty hot. I think he had three threes in the first quarter. Was doing pretty good, and then just ice cold, throughout the rest of the game. So I think Warriors are going to win game three, not by a lot, maybe like 5 points, 6 points. Things could be close. Um, if there's any game, I just think it's going to be this one. It could be game four. I mean, this series can be very close, right? Like, who knows? Honestly, they're both really great competitive teams, top defensive teams in the NBA and the playoffs, and then also both top offensive teams, right? Um, so I think the Warriors are just going to carry the momentum from this last game and ride the coattails of Steph. And then I just think that they have enough depth where they can keep that momentum going. And they don't, if Clay doesn't step up, they have other X factors that can jump in, like a Poole, right? So like if Poole can carry over the confidence from this game, the good shooting from this game, and help Steph in game three, then I really think that the Warriors can definitely take it. But they're playing like 9, 10 players. It feels like, the Warriors played Bielitsa, aka Bajelica, as the Miami Heat podcasters from the Five Reasons Sports Network that I follow and love. They couldn't pronounce his name, so they call him Bajelica. And then once they found out his name, they're like, "This guy's a scrub from the Kings." He's like, "We're not going to call him by his real name."
He actually
So
got some run last game.
yeah, he was like a -1, but like he's still like, I was 6 points, 5 rebounds, looked pretty decent out there. And um, Iggy got hurt, I guess, and didn't play, but just they have so many options where like they can have players that can contribute and get them double figures, right? Like an Otto Porter didn't get double figures, but he can. Poole can, Clay can, like even Looney can, right? Like
Looney's having
Wiggins
a
can.
great series.
Yeah, like he's doing great too as well defensively. The Warriors are just like Pritchard's not playing, right? Like they're just like on a tighter leash. Like Thies, whatever, is not doing anything, right? He's not really playing. There's a few extra players that played last night because obviously the blowout, right? Naismith and a few others, but I just think the Warriors are too deep and can ride the momentum. I mean, of course, I think Boston can obviously win game three at home, but I think of the two games, if it's going to be a split, which I imagine it will be, I think the Warriors win game three. I think Boston wins game four. And then we'll see. I don't know. I thought Warriors in six at first, but it could potentially go to seven. Like even though this game was a blowout, like the Warriors again still shot pretty, or not the Warriors, excuse me, the Celtics shot pretty well, 41% from three. Tatum had a big, game. Jaylen Brown, decent game, I guess. And they were still in it, until like the midway in the third quarter, where they started completely missing shots, getting locked up by the Warriors. So I think, yeah, I think the Warriors are going to win
Yeah, it's
game
possible
three.
that Boston was looking at themselves like we got game one already, and then the game was starting to slip away. They probably didn't have the sense of urgency to try to come back. They were down
Right.
like 13 in the third, and then it just ballooned to like 23 on a few threes. So Boston wasn't like, we got to get this game or else we're down 2-0. I think the fact that they had that first game in their pocket, they probably took their foot off the gas more than they would have in a different situation.
Right.
And that's what kind of led to the onslaught for Golden State. But it's going to be interesting because Boston hasn't lost two games in a row all playoffs.
Right.
And if the Warriors do steal home court immediately, that would be the first time. But I mean, if there's a team out there that's going to do it, it's going to be this version of the Warriors. I mean, they got great coaching. Steph's playing great. He's front runner for MVP. Draymond seems to have figured out that he can't just take open jump shots at the 3-point line. That's going to be bad for the offense. And then we'll see. Jordan Poole's an interesting player because it seemed like he really started getting his stats after the game was getting out of hand. I'd like to see
In the
him.
quarter, right.
Yeah, I like to see him in a close game on the road and see if he's that good in that situation.
We'll
That
see.
remains to be seen.
Yeah. I mean, Boston was playing like on house money. We did our job, we split, and if we can, even though they're not the best at home, like you mentioned, their records like 5-4. If they can hold serve, because they do have a good, home fan base, rowdy fan base. So like in theory should be better at home. I don't know why. Again, they're a young team. They're inconsistent. They're shooting right,
Turnovers.
turnovers, all that stuff. But like, hey, like maybe on paper, like, hey, just we go home, we win these two at home, we're in command of the series, right? So, but also if we lose, we have to split. If we split, we're such a good road team, 8-3 on the road that like, hey, we could steal one of the two, game 5 or 7, against the Warriors as well. So, um, yeah, interesting to see what will happen. Last question, just before we hop off. So, who needs to be the X factor now moving forward for the Celtics if they want to be competitive and win, game 3 and just the series in general? Who do you think? I know they could change from game to game. I think that's my opinion, but who do you think is like the most critical person outside of Jason Tatum?
Well, I would say Jalen Brown, but I'm going to go with Marcus Smart because if he's going to be orchestrating the offense, that's really going to be the determining factor if Boston's create for like gener drawing turnovers, right?
Yep.
So if Marcus Smart, I noticed in the first half of game two, he was trying to lead players to some place they weren't going and they were just live ball turnovers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he
I
he
remember
needs
that.
to clean that up. So if he can set the tone and take care of the ball, that's going to be important because you're probably going to get a boost from Jalen Brown. Al Horford probably won't score 2 points again. So those are expectations that are reasonable. But when it comes to the turnovers, it's going to start with the point guard who's handling the ball most of the time, and that's Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart was not even a factor whatsoever in game two. So I think he's the X factor. If he can create sort of an offense that is not all over the place, drawing bad fouls, like things like that, then I think he's going to be the X factor. What
Yeah.
do you think?
I'm gonna stick with Horford just because I expect Smart to be that third option, kind of like that Wiggins or Clay interchangeably, right? It's Steph, Clay, Wiggins for the Warriors. I think um, Smart is that third option that should get you some buckets, orchestrate the offense, right, as the floor general. And then he's gonna, make his presence felt on the defensive end, obviously. But I'm thinking Horford, in order for the Celtics to win, they need him to be that guy where he gets you maybe the 14 to 16 point, 17 point range. And then it's like if he's getting you 14 to 17 points, that's really difficult to beat them because he's averaging maybe 10 points in the playoffs or so, maybe 11, right? So if he's getting that 3 to 5 extra points, that could be significant, right? Um, and he's just one of their most skilled big men, right? Like Williams is not a factor offensively. Grant Williams has been inconsistent. Um, More of a factor on defense, but Horford can do both, right? And he could pass pretty well as a big man. So I don't expect him to get 2 points again, but I sure as hell don't expect him to get 26. So
Yeah,
it's like
I
get
mean,
there 14,
he had an
right?
exceptional game and then he had a really shitty game. So it's like he's probably
Back
going
to
to be
the
somewhere in the
averages.
middle for game
Back to
three.
Yeah, back to the averages. If he can get you like 13, 14, if he can get you like, even if he gets you his 10, 9, 11, whatever, 9, 10, 11 points, that's like good enough. You need like that fourth double scorer for the team, right? Because if Tatum
And he can impact the game in ways that don't involve scoring.
exactly. And if that's just the added bonus, because Tatum and Brown are both going to average in the 20s, right? Like they're both going to average close to like what? Brown, I would say 22, 23 points, and then Tatum like 26, 27 points. So you're going to get significant amount of points there. So anything else is just a bonus as long as Smart's contributing and the role players are contributing as well, like the Grant Williamses or the Pritchards possibly off the bench. So we'll see. So should be exciting.
So
Fun
you got
series.
Warriors in game three?
Yeah, Warriors in game 3. I'm still going to keep Warriors in 6. Um, but it could go 7, right? But I'm gonna say Warriors still in 6. I think they win game 3, but then it's like if they win game 3, can they? Can they steal game 4?
It's
That would be kind
possible.
of
It's
crazy.
possible.
Hey, what does Kevin Garnett say, right? Speaking of the Celtics, anything's possible, maybe,
Anything's
right?
possible.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for watching the video. So please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We'll be back after game 3 this week with another post game recap and preview. So thanks again.